Let me go ahead and share my screen. Awesome. And everyone should have access to this doc. I think Mitch had issues in the past, but feel free to come here and add any agenda items that you have. I so far have been the one populating it, but if you don't have edit access or anything like that, please let me know. First thing on the agenda today is just making sure everyone knows about the new meeting link, which I assume we all know because we're here. But Istio had that transition last week where we are now using a new calendar. So our meeting cadence is still the same. It's just a new meeting link that we'll be joining on. And I'm still working with Mitch to figure out our recording, so that will be coming soon. Our next agenda item is pretty much to go over the work that we're actively doing now and provide a status update. So I've been leading the graduation efforts for telemetry API to beta and some learnings. Oh yes, I will ping Mitch to do that. Thank you. So some learnings that I've had in regards to like graduating the telemetry API is that when I put more effort into like refining the use cases, especially since the previous versions may have had a more elaborate or ambitious use cases, this helped like clarify the scope for telemetry API to beta, and as well as drive conversations around, is the API actually doing this, or is this like a common use case still? Do we want to keep on supporting this? So this is something that I have added to like our things to note when we ever want to do any future graduation in the future. Something that came up is the fact that in Istio, all of our APIs, regardless of the API version, needs to conform to the same schema due to the fact that we are not using any conversion webhooks. This is a Kubernetes API requirement, and because of this, we are in a place where we don't necessarily have like a one-way approach right now in terms of like how we want to graduate APIs in Istio that may not necessarily want to have certain fields still around, or we want to like graduate fields, like take a field-based approach for graduating it through like its own individual life cycle. And I have created an issue for us to like explore and expand on as we wrap up telemetry API. But a bit of background here is that we initially wanted to do like a field-based approach where the subset of fields that we want to promote, those are the only fields that will become beta. However, we have quickly found out that there isn't any annotation infrastructure to support that. So I am still exploring the best way to go about it, which will more than likely take the stance of creating a separate, distinct API, similar to how Kubernetes Gateway API did theirs, where we will either rename the API name or the API group to create that separation where it doesn't need to conform to telemetry API alpha. But this issue is sort of tracking like the work that we will do in the future, where we provide like a solid opinionated guidance on how we want to go about this, whether it's continuing to do like the separate APIs or building out the tooling to support the field level annotations, or as well as like untangling the tech debt that has been created in the past due to other API promotions that have sort of simply just tagged a field as deprecated without truly removing it entirely from the APIs. So that is one of the biggest things that is now the main blocker for getting consensus on telemetry API. But we do have a path forward. It's just to iron out that this week and wrap up the telemetry API proposal. Any questions there? Some other learnings that came out of this was creating the draft Istio blog announcement for that should be going out when we do graduate the API. Really helped other folks be able to contribute to the discussions and make the decisions needed to like move the consensus along. So that's something that we should definitely want to keep on doing. And having a future work section in the proposal really helped, like, I guess, backlog certain discussions that would have increased the scope, as well as provide like a clear, easy on ramp for like continued work in the future. And we saw the benefit of this in Facila's work with the dual stack promotion, where she's able to jump in and work on promoting dual stack because the previous owners of dual stack took the effort to write like how to get involved and future work to do. So this is another thing that we want to ensure and like continue keeping up when we are doing any feature promotion work. So that's my learnings and I guess my status update around telemetry API. I can pass if does anyone have any questions? If not, I can pass the mic.
So
Go ahead.
what's the next step for resolving the to create a new API versus trying to promote just a subset of fields issue?
So I am now in agreement with Costin that the simplest way to just move this forward is to create the new API group. So the next step is simply fleshing out that section in the doc and sending it around for final approval among everyone, and we should be good to go.
Okay, cool. Sorry, you mentioned that, but I didn't quite pick up on that point. So yeah, that sounds great to me.
Any other questions?
I have one. So hi everyone. This is around the tech debt for the API. So is it only for the code level we are tracking this tech debt, or do we also have some, let's say the document debt as well, like some features which is covered in the code but not documented? Do we also kind of cover as a part of this issue, or it's something we need to do?
I think we need to do it because at a high level, we know there's a lot of tech debt. So for instance, with this specific issue, what we have seen is in the V1 Alpha 3 gateway versus the V1 Beta 1 gateway, what folks did was simply added like an annotation deprecated equals true to certain fields that they no longer wanted to be a part of the promoted API. And I did a quick search across like the API repo, and there's like a good bit of like different fields that have been deprecated. And the trickiness here is the fact that if different versions of the same API, since they have to conform, whatever you do in one, you have to do in all. So there's like a lot of duplication around like this deprecated field and not any effort to actually remove the field entirely across all of the API versions. Costin alluded to a past effort to remove it, and he doesn't think it was like worthy of the effort. So I think we are getting into that weird space where deprecation is a fallacy, and to like what extent we'd want to actually deprecate and remove support for deprecated stuff in Istio. That would be a bigger initiative that we have to undertake in the future. Were you going to say something, Ethan?
No, I wasn't. Sorry.
Cool. So I think there's a lot of like work to do there. Okay. And I can pass the mic to you now, Imran, to give an update on your work.
Yeah, so on my end, so I started working on, let's say, like from our last meeting, I created an issue to look around the, let's say, open issues and also even the closed issues related to the custom tags and the provider for the tracing. And I found one issue which is kind of like open, but it's resolved. And I think it was, so yeah, there are two issues, which is one is I think there is a document missing. There's an old issue. It seems like a feature is kind of done. Maybe the document is missing, but the other issue, this one is kind of it's fixed and resolved. And the last feedback what I got is like after the promotion to beta, this issue will be reviewed. So that's what I got today. yeah, what's the, yeah, but this doesn't block, is that this is not a new thing. It seems like a bug fix, kind of like a bug fix, and it's now done. So maybe after a promotion, this could be resolved. But yeah, this doesn't capture any new usage, or yeah, it's the existing behavior. It's not a new thing asked. So this is the one of the thing which I figured out. And yeah, there is other issue which is like it got, it's old issue. It's kind of very old. I don't know what's the behavior, and it seems it's closed, but I couldn't find a, let's say, the PR which addresses, it's part of I think one of the release. I couldn't find exact which release is that, and I checked in the, yeah, I checked in the, I think in the one of the linked backlog, and I could not find this feature was added. I'm not sure. So at least it's tagged under the docs. Maybe it's just a document which need to be enhanced. So I'm not sure. Maybe folks around here can help me on this. I don't know. So this is, let's say, the another issue which at least related to the custom tags was in halfway. I could not comprehend. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems like it was closed based on like the life cycle scale.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see if this is one of the fields that we want to promote. It seems like we decided we didn't want to promote custom traits and tags as well. So maybe this is one of those issues to surface if we ever do want to promote that field.
Mhm. I think maybe what I when I think this issue is probably fixed, or this functionality is part of the existing custom tags feature, which I don't know, because the user is asking for, let's say, a specific response header. We already support the request header and other environment variable. So the response header is currently supported on, I couldn't find in the docs. So I believe that's the reason it's tagged under the docs. So I just need to verify if it's actually a missing functionality of the existing custom tags feature.
Got it. I think
Yeah.
Zirain might be the best person to ping.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, exactly. I figured out in the other issue, so I'll try to. I think he's a bit responsive, so I'll try to ask him if it's there. Yeah, if it's there, I'll at least then let's say the last piece, if it's existing, and if that's the case, I think we need to add some documentation around this. I was looking around the issues. So if you go back to the Google Doc, the third improvement item for this, let's say the issues that we could, I mean, the document speaks only about adding the custom tags, but we can also, there are a couple of issues which got resolved due to the, how can we, remove some unknown tags as well, or not unknown, some other tags as well. What's the guideline? Maybe we could, yeah, work around this topic as well as a part of custom tags, because we specifically support how to do adding the tags, but we don't say how we could remove, or how a user could, a kind of like guideline. It's there are at least I could find 3 issues regarding to, to remove remove the tags. So this
cool.
could be
Okay.
like, yeah.
I'm curious why Zirain said he will review it after the telemetry APIs was actually promoted. That's a good sign in the sense that it's not a blocker for the promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this week. I'll continue on with the provider. That's the next step missing in this issue. I'll try to figure out what's in there, and yeah, update next time.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. I don't know if you have any updates or learnings you want to share from the dual stack promotion to CEO.
Yes, Pitney. So I do not have much updates since I just came back from vacation. But yes, we are focusing on adding more integration tests before trying to fix any of the open bugs. And then there was one big missing piece in the implementation. So I was just talking to the owner of the feature, asking if he will be interested in uh, implementing that piece. I think he has pushed a PR. I have not yet got time to talk to him afterwards. Need to review the PR. Maybe we'll discuss with John as well on what he thinks about the implementation, and we have to take it forward from there. But yes, there is work still ongoing.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And before we move on to the next section, is anyone else working on any enhancements related stuff that they want to provide an update on?
We don't want to track ambient here in this, isn't it? The ambient work to beta.
I know, well, I don't think any of us is active in that work right now. So I'm thinking we can track the work that we are actively working on. Um,
Okay.
but we can revisit that as well. Okay. So we can move to the next section, which is more like a brainstorm. Since our last enhancements call, I've been gathering feedback on how we can really ensure that we're being effective here. We have had roughly 4 meetings to date, and we always want to ensure that we are actually making progress. So I'm hoping that we can use this time to like really flesh out how do we really measure our progress, and like just think about any frustrations we may be having right now as we are like getting into a flow of doing things, and we want to make sure we are working on like something that actually creates value. And when I requested feedback, as well as in my own reflection, something stuck out to me, which is like, we don't want to get stuck in creating processes that may or may not be adopted. So I was thinking like enhancements, we have so much processes we would like to iron out, for instance, like the feature graduation, like what that looks like at a high level, or like deprecating something. We all have like opinions there, but no one has truly like formalized it into like a baseline um guide for folks to get started on. And it would be nice if we contribute there, but we don't want to make all of our tasks or majority of our tasks primarily focus on that process creation, but instead focus our task on things that we know is actually moving the needle forward on the things that we started this subgroup for, which is actually graduating features, deprecating features, and figuring out what that looks like, and actually enhancing the features that we know, like beefing up the feature if it's supposed to be beta, ensuring that it actually meets like the stage criteria that it is in. So that is something that occurred to me, and initially, our goals this milestone was promote telemetry API as well as figure out the deprecation process. But I think the deprecation process is something that can be improved, or like a work in progress. Like any processes that we want to build out, that should be a work in progress attached to something more meaningful or measurable as we go along. What do you all think?
So are you suggesting pausing on formalizing the deprecation process and just focusing on the telemetry API?
I wouldn't. I am suggesting that we find something we can attach the deprecation process to. For instance, like how we came across like the tech debt in the APIs, and using those efforts to work on the deprecation process.
So attach the deprecation process to like a actual feature you want to deprecate,
Correct.
and then use that as sort of a precedent for future deprecation.
Yes.
I
And
think it's a good idea for what it's worth.
thank you.
We should pick something you want to deprecate. But the nice thing about it is it'll make it less abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in an ideal world, if we were starting from scratch, like if Istio is a brand new project and we have greenfield to create enhancements processes, that would be really great, and we could have easily adopted something like CAPS or the JETS. And since we're in like this brownfield world, it's like we are trying to make progress while also clean up what's behind us, and we can't necessarily come in and like say this is the process we need to adopt right now. We have to figure out how to like gradually make it easy to adopt, and an easy transition to continue to maintain that process without us having to like become a nag. Yeah. Cool. does that help us feel like if we are making more progress too, like knowing that everything that we're doing is attached to a feature that is either going to move up, move down, or be enhanced?
I think so. I think the next step would be to um, pick something to deprecate. But yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Cool. So another thing that came up is we don't want to be the only ones doing all the work to upkeep Istio's feature hygiene. So that requires us to like one, prioritize and flesh out the key initiatives slash work to be done, but also be intentional about delegating that work. And based on certain things that have been surfacing, we have official Istio roles, for instance, release managers, working group leads, meeting facilitators that can help own some of this responsibility or actually getting the work done. So a good example is, I'm not sure if you all were in the working group call last week, but we came across this roadmap sheet where the working group facilitator, I am not sure her name, but when she was pretty much doing the job that Francis is currently doing, she was a big person involved in driving this sheet, the creation of this sheet, where she was working with the different working group leads to create like a roadmap for each of their working group sections. And whenever they did meet, they were using this sheet as like their reference point of like what is the work being done and what progress is being made. So in her role, this was part of her responsibility. And right now we don't have anyone who has the responsibility of like aligning all the working group leads slash efforts being done in Istio, as well as the working group leads, they aren't actively creating these roadmaps anymore. So I'm not sure where that broke down in terms of like why we no longer require the working group leads to create roadmaps, or why we no longer try to create a unified view like this. But this is something we want to figure out again and figure it out in a way that it's not a drag, but it's truly beneficial to all of us, and work alongside them. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Lenny. I think the last like follow-up task, if I recall correctly, was to reach out to Francis. Have we done that yet, or is that still something we plan to do?
Yes. So I spoke with Francis, and he did, when he took over the role, the previous person didn't hand this role over to him. Like he wasn't aware of this process before. And he's now asking like, who wants this and who has suffered because of the lack of this? So those are like two questions we can further explore. I'm not saying necessarily we should like recreate this whole process again, but we need to figure out like what how we can leverage these persons' roles and to get us at a point where we know what is like priority features to work on or graduate, and how we can delegate that work effectively. What do you think, Jeremy?
Um, yeah, honestly, I mean, I don't think that's something this group should probably take over, but at the same time, it seems like the information is very useful for us to have at hand. It's just not organized in that way at the moment. I'm not too sure like how we could go about getting people to volunteer. You can't force people to do things, obviously. Yeah, I'm not too sure what makes sense. Like us creating an initial doc, or just keep on surfacing it, hoping that someone volunteers. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
I agree. It seems like this might be something that, like, in terms of like project management, that feels like that might be more of a TOC type decision to make. It might be good to get John's perspective as.
Yeah, I
We've
agree.
been loosely following. We're talking about the roadmaps and stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that
Yeah.
we don't want to drive the roadmap creation, we just want to align with whatever roadmap exists. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, how it worked before when we had a very active roadmap and working group process was each of the working groups would come up with their roadmap, and then they would present those to the TOC, which would give feedback, and then there'd be kind of a higher level project-wide roadmap as well. I think the higher level one was usually yearly, and the other ones were release based. The other ones were too frequent even back then when we were very active and structured. So that was always an issue. But I think something along those lines makes sense. Like this group can help facilitate it and whatnot, but the actual designing of the roadmap is a TOC and working group level thing.
Do you believe
John,
the
is that
TOC?
something?
I was going to ask, do you believe the TOC and the working group leads is able to get back to doing this type of detail?
Probably, yes. Let me rephrase it. I think they ought to. So if that doesn't happen, then we should find ways to make it happen.
Agreed. Sorry, Jeremy, what were you going to say?
Just exactly what John was saying. I was going to ask if there was a way for him or anyone that frequents the TOC meetings to convince them to do something along those lines. I just think it would be, I mean, it's not just for this group either. I think in general, having the roadmap organized in the way that it used to be would be very helpful for a lot of things. One thing that comes to mind is, John probably remembers bringing this up a few times, but sometimes the community tends to work or focus on things that don't necessarily matter for the current goals, and having that transparent roadmap as it used to be in that format would probably help keep people focused on similar tasks instead of getting distracted. I think visibility and transparency is very helpful for things like that.
Cool. Okay. And just to be clear again, this is something that we'll want to facilitate to make it happen again and continue. But we don't necessarily want to do a lot of the feature level road mapping work. And that also leads us to us being very careful of how we sustain our leadership efforts in this space where we evangelize this work. So this is something we can pull out as a task if anyone wants to volunteer to lead this effort of trying to get the TOC and working leads to prioritize doing road mapping like this again. For now, I will pretty much create a to-do for myself to create that task. And if anyone is interested, please feel free to raise hands or ping me. And then let's see what's next. So this other point is along the lines of if there's a roadmap, we can align with it. So some great examples of this is when I reviewed the 2023 roadmap for Istio, telemetry and WASM was prioritized as the features that the TOC wanted to stabilize. So we aligned there. And then in 2022, they mentioned that they really want to put a lot of effort towards moving APIs out of mesh config into its own data plane APIs. So I think being aware of what matters to the working groups and the TOC can really help us feel if we align and making progress. And then this comes back to how do we ensure that we are operating effectively? We need to get on top of keeping track of our own key metrics. For instance, the features that we are prioritizing and the areas that matter. Similar to that roadmap document that we have, but we need one that is clear to our use cases and the things that matter to us. So we have to do some effort around figuring out what our key metrics are. So top of mind already came up was the being able to track like the total number of features in Istio and their current stages, as well as like the plans for getting them to the next stage. That was something that was nicely done in this doc where, let's see, for instance, how they have like each release cycle sort of like clearly identified and the target stage for that cycle for the specific feature. I really like that planning, and I think we can leverage some of that formatting in our own like dashboard that we create for our metrics, as well as I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but we have this features.yaml. In fact, we have this entire enhancements repo that was created to help us track all of the features in Istio. I don't believe all of the features have been added to this, as well as there's a bunch of like open PRs as well. So this is not the most up-to-date information. So we need to figure out, one, how can we adopt this repo as ours, specifically like each feature that .yaml to as the main source of truth for that feature, and what can we do to like leverage the data here to direct like what we're going to do next in regards to that feature, as well as like how we can just drive like feature graduation and all of that. So some effort needs to be directed towards like keeping the features that YAML up to date and as our main source of truth. And I think there's a bunch of other key metrics that we need to figure out and identify as important for us. If anyone has any thoughts on what those metrics can be, feel free to talk now or add to this doc or propose it later. But I think this is something that we need to be more intentional about. And yeah, I'll pause there if anyone wants to add anything there. Cool. Okay. And this is the next point. Like we need to figure out one, how do we get these open PRs on enhancements repo closed? So the PRs that are open is like different efforts around updating the documentation around a specific feature page, as well as efforts for promoting a feature. I know the TOC has to like approve this specific type of PRs, but I don't know if the TOC will require or will like our assistance in cleaning up some of these PRs. And I believe that would be a question to John. John, do you have any thoughts on like what we can do around getting these PRs like closed?
Yeah, we probably just need someone to go through and care enough to approve them. I mean, I think these are mostly backfilling, so they shouldn't be controversial, I would imagine. So in Kubernetes, they have like the reviewers and approvers thing. We don't really have an Istio formally, but it may help if someone went through and reviewed them all, and then TOC could just rubber stamp them all with the assumption that they're good because someone else reviewed. Or we can try and get someone else from TOC to do it. But if you're struggling to get anyone on TOC to care, then that's an easy way to lower what you need from them.
Okay, so we can go through, approve it. Well, I guess pick it off that it looks good, and then just ping you all to approve it and get it closed.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds good. And you can ping me. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so that's some more active work that we can get done. Thank you. So yeah, so that wraps up that discussion around like how do we measure progress. I think we will continue having that until we get into like a solid flow of knowing that hey, we're actually moving the needle in Istio and we feel like we understand what we can do and have like the buy-in of the community to keep it going as well. So with that, the other agenda is simply like if you have bandwidth and you want to pick up some available work, we have our enhancements project here. This work can be attached to one of our ongoing initiatives or just a random ad hoc task that the enhancements need. And there's a ready column where if there's any issue that isn't assigned to anyone, feel free to pick it up. We currently have this issue that Eric brought to us, which is in regards to this validate the features. Let's see. So there's this job that was run to validate like the features that the YAML that we looked at previously is in the proper format. I'm not sure what else it does, but it has been failing since the verification code was removed. John and Eric has more information on this, but this is some work that can be picked up if interested. Yeah, that wraps up my agenda for today's call. I would love to open the floor to anyone else who has like something they would like to discuss or for us to like brainstorm on. If not, I can give you all back the rest of the 16 minutes of this hour. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Feel free to DM me more feedback, more thoughts, or more suggestions on how we can keep this moving. Justin, you have something to say?
I was just gonna say thank you.
No worries. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.